Hey friends, I have the sounds of Christmas out my window over here. There's a kids group out there. They're doing Angels We Have Heard on High. They're rehearsing it for our Christmas pageant that comes up a little bit later in this month. But for right now, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about the human tendency to use wealth. And wealth is a common tendency, but we also use other things too, to use wealth or anything other than God to sort of hedge against the insecurities in life and how futile that is. So stick around. Hi, I'm Stuart Perry. I'm the pastor of New Life Community Church in beautiful Burlingame, California. We are a church that is absolutely convinced that a personal relationship with God really is possible, and it's possible through Jesus Christ. And because we're so convinced of that, we are absolutely committed to pursuing that relationship with anyone and everyone who would like to join us on the journey, whether you're just beginning or whether you're already sitting on a mountaintop, in the midst of the kingdom of God, fully realized already. We're committed to joining together to pursue that kind of relationship with God because we believe that all of us are made for that. We believe that, as I think St. Augustine said, that there is a hole in all of our hearts that can only be filled by the love of God. And so we'll pursue that. We're going to do it with creativity, with courage. We're going to do it with passion. We're also going to do it without arrogance. We're going to do it with humility because we have seen the damage that an arrogant, boastful pursuit of God does to people, families, neighborhoods, communities, and even to our world. So if that sounds interesting to you, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications so that whenever there's a new Bible study, sermon, or some other kind of content on this page, you will know about it. So I want to talk today about the futility of trying to create security in life by storing up riches for yourself or really by putting our faith in anything other than God Himself. And this comes out of Matthew chapter 6. We've been going through the Sermon on the Mount. This is Jesus' stump speech. It occurs twice in the Bible, but I believe there's evidence that he probably preached some version of this same sermon over and over and over and over again every time he went into a new town. And we're kind of midway through at this point. We've just been through teachings on generosity, giving to the poor, teachings on prayer, and teachings on fasting. And we looked at how Jesus takes these three common spiritual practices. It occurred to me, I was reading something last night that pointed out that these are three of the 5 pillars of Islam. So they're common to multiple religions. And he wants his followers to practice them, but he wants us to do it a bit differently, and he sort of comes down on hypocrisy, and he comes down on practicing so that others can see. And then there's kind of this shift, and there's a bunch of different teachings that come up next, and I want to just focus in on a few of them, beginning with verse 19 and going through verse 24 for today. And it does center around putting our faith in the wrong things, right? And so he starts out in verse 19. He says, "Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth," right? That's our common thing. We want to store up for ourselves treasures on earth. We build big bank accounts. We buy big houses. We make investments here and there. We're thinking of this financially, although I think it applies much broader than that. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. There's a great line that Tom Long has that the lifestyles of the rich and famous are also, and maybe more accurate, the lifestyles of the vulnerable and perpetually fearful, because the things that wealth can buy can be destroyed, right? The car can be stolen, the expensive suit can be eaten by moths, thieves can break in and take the diamonds and the gold. That's what Jesus is saying. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where things can be destroyed, but Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin don't destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. So put your faith in God, not the things of this world, for your comfort and for your security. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so this gives us a hint that this is about more than just financial planning or about planning for our future comfort. There's an element of vision here. Where your treasure is, your heart will be. Andy Stanley did a great sermon on this, talking about how you can guide your heart by placing your treasure correctly. So if you put your treasure all in savings bonds, you're going to constantly be looking at the rates. If you put everything in the stock market, you're going to check it every morning. If you put it in ministry, your focus is going to be in ministry and what God is doing. There's a sense in which if we place our treasures well, then we can guide where our hearts are. Think about that. It's really powerful. And then there's the next verse is kind of interesting. It says, this is verse 22, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is the darkness? And then he gives another illustration, I think trying to illustrate the same thing. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and mammon. You can't serve both God and money. You can't serve both God and diet. You can't serve both God and fitness. You can't serve both God and politics. You can't serve both God and country. You can't serve both God and the military. He's not saying that you can't be a good citizen. He's not saying that you can't be responsible with your money, that you can't. He's not even saying you can't accumulate wealth. He's saying you can't serve. It raises the question, this came up, this will date the recording a little bit, but this came up in a debate last night that was on CNN, where there's a pastor running for the Senate, and he's running against someone who's not a pastor, a business person. And the business person is outraged because of a sermon the pastor gave at some point on this passage, where he gave a list of all the things you can't do and serve God. And one of the things was you can't serve the military, you can't serve wealth, you can't serve this and that and the other. And it's a pretty standard line. And his challenger is offended by, what do you mean you can't? And it sort of brings up this Christian nationalism that we've criticized before, or seen Matthew criticize before already in his gospel. This idea that somehow the state and religion come together, and that faith and politics go hand in hand. And that's not the way that Christianity plays it. It's not that you can't serve in the military and be Christian. It's not that you can't serve in the military and serve God. It's not that you can't serve, your city as a police officer, but you can't serve the military. You can't serve. And we've used this language in a way that frankly is dangerous in our country. Because what he's saying is that there's always going to be one priority. Your vision has to stay on that one thing. That's what the I thing is. Your vision and how we view the world, whether through God's eyes or through the eyes of something else, in anything else, leads to tragedy. And so Jesus is very much saying, you've got to choose who you will serve. You've got to choose that lens through which you're going to view the world. If you want to go back to money again, it's kind of the difference between viewing the world as a competitive thing and as an open-ended thing, right? If you see the world through the lens of sort of a competitive lens, then I win, you lose, and therefore I have to protect my own. But if you see the world as Jesus is talking about, through the kingdom of God lens of endless possibilities, then if you win, we all win, because the whole tide rises. And I want you to just think about some of those issues. There's a lot in this, and I've thrown a huge amount of stuff into consideration here. And if you're watching this before Thursday, December 10th, 2020, we're going to have a discussion of this passage on Zoom, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, December 10th, Thursday night, 2020. Email me, direct message me for the details, or leave some comments, questions, thoughts that you have on this passage. It's an incredibly provocative passage. It would have really sort of punched in the gut the first listeners, because it's a challenge to consistently try to view the world through the eyes of the kingdom of God and through service to God, rather than service to other things and people. And again, the temptation is to try to find our security and our comfort in the things that we can control. But what we don't understand is that those things are horrible masters. There's only one master that actually sets us free. And as we serve him and serve him alone, and we can serve in these other things, we can be involved in these other things, but getting this one thing right will free us to live in freedom in all these other areas, so that we can be full, God-formed people in the rest of our lives. Have a great day. God bless.